Okay, so I did it. I finally finished The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. I feel like it took me way too long to finish this book. And it's not because it wasn't good. You'll hear in just a little bit that I'm just gonna rave about this book, basically. It's really, really great. I just have been kind of in a slump the last few weeks, but I finally broke that slump and I finished this in about 2 sittings. I think whenever I started, I was on page like 205 or something, and then just really honed in one night and read about 300 pages straight. And then my wife and I got up the next day, went and sat at a coffee shop, and I finished it. So it definitely was just more of a not feeling like reading than anything to do with the book. But anyway, I'll start the review now. So The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne is the sequel to The Shadow of the Gods and is the second book in John Gwynne's Bloodsworn Saga series that is kind of his ongoing trilogy right now. We kind of pick up right where we left off in the first book with our 3 original POV characters. There's Orca and Elvar and Varg. And then in this book, he introduces 2 new POV characters. And I'm kind of seeing a lot of people not really talk about them. And the more I think about it, the more I kind of like people maybe discovering for themselves who those new POV characters are. I will say they're villain POVs, which is a really good choice, I think, to add a lot of different perspective and different just takes on the world, because you know, this is kind of heroic fantasy, so you do follow 3 people who maybe do not the right thing all the time, but are by and large easy to root for. They're good people for the most part. But this addition of the more morally gray, or in some cases just outright bad people, I think just was a really fresh take for this series, and added a lot of variety in the chapters. I can't say that I like the new characters as much as the old ones yet. Well, the jury's kind of out on that. We'll have to see kind of how the series ends. But by and large, I think it was a good choice. One thing that I liked about this book, kind of compared to the last one, was that John Gwynne opened up the setting just a little bit more, which I liked. Vigrid on its own is, and I don't think I really talked about this in my review of The Shadow of the Gods, but it feels smaller than maybe some settings of other books that I've read. You know, like Roshar just feels vast, and I don't know what it was about the last book that made it feel like that Vigrid wasn't that big, which is fine. It was just something that I noticed. And in this book, you know, we get to see a little bit of different cultures, and it also provided a bit of visual variety and a change of aesthetic for cultures, and I really loved that a lot. I also wanted to talk about the action, because it is very present in this book. John Gwynne seems to be kind of famous for his action. I will say that I feel like that there is probably less action than there was in the first book, but I feel like personally that he's maybe going for a little bit of like a quality over quantity approach this time around, because the battle scenes are just epic and cinematic and brutal, and especially like Orca and Varg's chapters, where there are pretty consistently there's tainted fighting. It's just so brutal. I mean, you have people constantly taking bites out of each other, or digging into people with elongated claws, or, you know, throwing warriors all across the battlefield with this superhuman strength that comes from the different gods' bloodlines, different powers. And I just love also the diversity in the Tainted's powers that we got in this book. You know, we kind of start to see a lot more of them. Some of them start to feel kind of similar, but I think that he does a really good job of kind of just differentiating them enough, you know, to feel unique and their own. And it continues to be one of my favorite magic systems that I'm reading right now. I just think it's so fun, and it's so easy to latch onto, you know, like, okay, this person has a wolf dad. That's not exactly right, but you know what I mean. Like, you know, so he has wolf abilities, you know. I also think that John Gwynne's experience as a medieval battle reenactor really shined through in this book all of the times where our characters were fighting side by side in a shield wall. It felt like it was written from someone who has experience doing that, because it was, you know, him and his sons kind of famously do that as their hobby, I guess. And you can just tell that, you know, he really knows like all the details of shield work and the teamwork tactics and the camaraderie of fighting in a shield wall. And it made you feel like you were holding a shield right there next to the characters, which is really cool. Speaking of characters, let's talk about them. Starting with probably the most iconic character in this series, Orca is still on her quest to find Brekka. And she still is not taking crap from anyone. I mean, that's kind of just her character. I did sometimes kind of feel like she was a little one note in this book, a little Liam Neeson, you know, I will find you and I will kill you. But, you know, the more that I thought about it, the more that I just kind of felt like that was okay. You know, she is the embodiment of an iconic character. You know, she doesn't need to have a big amount of growth or change to be interesting. You know, she is kind of older, she's set in her ways, she is experienced and very capable and driven to accomplish her goal, and that in and of itself is interesting. She's really balanced out by, and all of the POV characters, of our original 3 POV characters are really balanced out by an awesome supporting cast, an awesome group of side characters. You know, Leaf, whatever his name is, he comes back, you know, and provides a lot of balance to Orca's grizzled, hardened experience with a lot of his inexperience and naive nature. He kind of has a little bit more of an arc in this book than Orca does, which, like I said, Orca being an iconic character is totally fine, and didn't bother me at all. So I think I said it in the last video that Varg was my favorite character, and even though that has changed for this book, I still love Varg. Varg, his whole arc was super interesting to me, predominantly for a lot of the same reasons. I mean, he still gives you the most chapters with the Bloodsworn, and I love the Bloodsworn so much. John Gwynne takes a lot of time to really flesh them out in this book. Rukia is just great, Einar is great, Glornir is great. All of the Bloodsworn just really get a moment to shine. You know, Ingmar and all of the different Edel, and like it's pretty rare for me that I can remember a lot of these big cast of characters' names, you know. Gwynne did such a great job of giving all of these characters a standout moment or feature or trait, you know, to really make them stick out in your mind. The first book, it kind of felt like Varg was just trying to get accepted into the Bloodsworn and trying to find his place there. And this book really feels a lot like family. It makes you just really care about these people a lot. And it was just super effective. Varg also had one of the creepiest chapters. I'm not gonna go super into detail about it, but I thought it was worth mentioning that, you know, I don't think that Gwynne really is like a horror author. I wouldn't consider this book scary, but they fight a specific monster, and if you've read the book, maybe you know what I'm talking about. But there was this one monster that they fought that just left me so unsettled, just so creeped out, and I loved it. It was such a surprise to have those kind of, I don't know if you want to call it themes, I don't know what you want to call it, but it was just, like, even thinking about it now makes my skin crawl a little bit, and that's just fun. You know, I wasn't expecting that at all, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. A lot of the battles and the encounters feel kind of like a hack and slash. You know, we're gonna sword and spear and axe our way out of this, and this moment was still that, but just with a different dynamic to it that was just super fresh and so fun. I thought that was a really great surprise too. Okay, so maybe it's a hot take, and I have heard a lot of people talk about how much they like Elvar in this book, but I think for me, and you know, having slept on it and having thought about it a little bit more, I think Elvar is probably my favorite character, which is really great, considering how lukewarm I was on her in the first book. I didn't necessarily find her that interesting. She grew on me a little bit in the first book, but still, of the 3 main characters, she just was not my favorite. And in this book, you get a lot of just really tragic but well done backstory moments with her and Grind. Grind probably comes through as one of my favorite, if not my favorite, supporting character too. I loved getting a little bit more of an explanation as to the details of their relationship and why Grind is so honor bound to her. Elvar in the first book was a bit of a coming of age story, and in this book, you really she kind of comes into her own. She explores a lot of the themes of, leadership and responsibility and things that maybe it's just because I'm experiencing a lot of those things in my personal life right now too, dealing with being in charge of things for, the first time, being an adult, I guess. It was really relatable for me to kind of watch her deal with the struggle. My job is not life or death with the people that I'm dealing with. It's not that kind of responsibility, but just knowing that the decisions that you make directly affect other people, and she deals with a lot of that through this book. And I just thought that was so well done. I feel like I'm gushing about this book because I really liked it. It's easily in my top 5 for this year. Pretty high up on the list too. And I read both of these books this year, and having thought about it, I feel like I probably did like this one a little bit more than The Shadow of the Gods. I will say it does kind of suffer a little bit from, middle book syndrome, I guess. There's a lot of travel, and that slows the plot down quite a bit. There's a lot of people moving from place to place to place to place. But like I said, Gwynne's not only POV characters, but his supporting characters are so good that really didn't bother me much. Like I said, I was able to finish this book, almost 400 pages in 2 sittings because the characters are just that good. You just care about them that much. And all of his little quips and sarcastic jokes that's just kind of my humor too. My friends and I, that's our humor. We're constantly insulting each other. We're constantly just joking back and forth with each other like that. And he captures that kind of relationship on the page super well. That makes you feel like that these people have that kind of relationship. And so it makes those moments where they are traveling from place to place to place to place have a lot of brevity and character moments that it really kind of redeems the slower nature of what's happening there. That being said, whenever the plot does pick up, it picks up big, especially the last 100, 150 pages. We were sitting in that coffee shop and I just breezed through them. I mean, the plot just really hits a climax, and you just fly through those last 100, 150 pages. And it's satisfying as much as a second book can be. I don't know if cliffhangers are necessarily like a John Gwynne staple, but I felt kind of cliffhangered at the end of the first book, and definitely felt cliffhangered at the end of this second book. I guess that really just means that I'm really excited for the third book. I'm really excited for this trilogy to finish. I've heard that his final books are always his strongest books, and in seeing that, each book in this series so far, the 2 books that I've read, each one has gotten better. That makes me really excited to see how he's going to handle the ending to these characters and this world, and if he's going to continue to write in Vigrid, or if this is just going to be its own standalone trilogy. I don't know any of that stuff. So if if he's tweeted or said something about what he has planned after the Bloodsworn saga, let me know. I'd love to hear that. And I'd also love to hear if you read The Hunger of the Gods or The Shadow of the Gods. John Gwynne is definitely moving up my priority list of authors to read the backlog of. So, if you watched my first video, you know that the Bloodsworn saga is kind of my first dive into John Gwynne, and I'm super impressed and loving him so far. He's become one of my favorite authors to read here lately. And so I'm really looking forward to digging into The Faithful and the Fallen, and what's the other one? Blood and Bone. And so it's really cool to find a new author and just be super excited about him, which has kind of been what a lot of this year has been for me. It's just finding authors that I had never heard of before, who apparently, some people have been reading their books since like 2008 or something like that, or before, and I'm just now discovering them. But it makes it really fun to know that just on the horizon there's something else coming out, like this. It's fun to be in the middle of a series as it's coming out and have that third book to look forward to. So Like I said, if you read Hunger of the Gods, you read Shadow of the Gods, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I think that's all I got. So I'll catch you in the next one.